Welcome to the Total Wireless store, where total confidence awaits.
Our daughter's off to summer camp and we're worried our network coverage won't reach her.
Don't worry, you got this with Total Wireless. Our phones run on the nation's best 4G LTE network. It'll be like she never left.
The nation's best network? I feel better already.
Now you can focus on how you're spending your summer.
Discover the Total Wireless stores and get total confidence. The latest phones, the best network, all at great prices. Now open in New York. Refer to the latest terms and conditions of service at TotalWireless.com.
Welcome to Audiogyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers, and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host, Kedar Nimkar.
Today I have Jay Dutta back with us on Audiogyan. I recently did an interview with him discussing the role of design in startups. This episode is not a part 2 but a conversation purely on DesignUp, the totally go-to conference for design in tech. A quick background about Jay: he leads the Experience Design Charter for the new expanded MakeMyTrip Group and mentors startups. He's an AsiaPacific Lead for a non-profit IxDa and a founder curator of DesignUp Conference. So thank you, JD, for giving us your time and welcome back to Audiogyan.
Thank you, Kedar. Thank you for having me here again.
Yeah. And in the last episode, which we discussed about role of design, and we concluded with a conference which you have found, which you're a founder and a curator of, which is DesignUp. So this mainly is to discuss more about that. What is in store? What can people look up to? And what is your overall philosophy behind this? Setting up this conference. So what is DesignUp?
Right. So DesignUp.
Sorry, before that, I would like before people listen to this podcast, you can log on to designup.io. Just browse through the website and then probably continue listening to this podcast.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks for that plug.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Kedar, DesignUp is of course a conference. That's how it started, and I've been associated with conference for as an attendee, as a speaker, as a workshop leader for many years. And not that I wanted to start a conference. We had that thought, me and there was someone I'd hired in Adobe called Narayan. We did think about a Adobe conference for India, and we did do a bunch of lobbying and things. It came to nothing. We kind of left the idea at that. And in 2016, we got started again. And it started with a conference. The initial one was focused on startups. But having said that, the main thing about DesignUp is to push up the design agenda in organizations which use tech to a great extent.
Okay.
So I have this philosophy is that design makes tech edible. Tech by itself is nothing which can be consumed in a normal way, but design makes it useful, usable, all those sorts of things. So this, I wanted to be a curation of all those stories of how design has actually made tech edible, tech useful, usable, all of that. And I think focused largely on products, but having said that, we have services, we have non-profits, we have people who have done good stuff for social sort of enterprises and so on. So in some ways, it's very broad. I think it's at the intersection of design, technology, and business. And it's for what makes humans smile. How do technology makes humans more human as opposed to more droids, some machines kind of thing. So I think that was probably where it started. That's how. And to answer the question briefly, it is a conference, but I think that's the cause I talked about. And there's, of course, a community angle to it. So part of it is the community factor to it. But in a sense, I don't really see a community as a faceless mass. I very often think about the people I know, the people I've worked with, my juniors, etc. Would they enjoy this? Would they love it? Would they want to come to this? And I think for me, that probably is very important. Will
they have insights to take away also?
That's right. Yeah. Do they have insights? Do they have... The other thing which we talked about a lot while being in the VC was the whole notion of actionable insights. So can I take away something from a conference and start applying it back on the Monday morning that I'm at work, or maybe on Saturday itself when I'm back there, back at home, back doing the normal regular things I do. So some of them may be very inspiring, but some of them would be probably very, very actionable. So I think that's probably the other part of it, which is key.
So do these, like, since you're the curator, you intentionally have these communicated to the speakers that we want it more actionable, or is it just in the culture itself?
So I think this is something we communicate to the speakers very clearly, that at the end of the talk, you should have a few takeaways. So your talk could meander, it could tell a story, and we would love people to tell a story, can be very visual, you do it your way. But as much as possible at the end of it all, sort of have some takeaways, maybe 3 takeaways, 5 takeaways, something that you can do and apply kind of.
Correct. And if you can tell us, why did you start it? I mean, just diving deep into the why.
Yeah, so in the last episode I did mention briefly, but I didn't kind of go into all the details and the depth of it.
Yeah.
So one reason was, of course, this whole varied understanding of design, and which is like probably some misconceptions around design in tech especially. Either you're thought of as a usability engineer or some very geeky person just moving the button left to right, or coloring a button. Buttons are like parts of our life kind of almost. But I think there's more to it. There's no UI, there's AR, VR, how do interfaces change? So there's a whole bunch of things which we were not talking about, I felt. The second thing was that I was probably dissatisfied with conferences which were happening in India. And I mean, there were some which were good, some which were not good, a lot of them which were terrible. And this could be industry bodies, private organizations, businesses. And I also felt that businesses and private organizations or large corporations were kind of forcing the design conversation. Sometimes to say, use my platform or use my product or use this or use that. Sometimes to say, okay, come to my kind of organization, etc., be a member, do this kind of thing. So I think it was almost like the design conversation, the design discourse was being taken away from designers. How do we reclaim our voices, and how do we say something for what we are, what we do, and celebrate the diversity that we do? The second thing, of course, is design in tech is a very interesting area, because no point in history have designers been able to influence such a large number of people through designs they create, both positively and negatively. So I think we need to sort of put our arm up and say, hey, designers need to be responsible. There's ethics, there is compliance, there's good stuff to be done here, and not all the negative stuff. So be aware, be a responsible citizen designer kind of thing. So in some ways, this was that platform. So one was, of course, around the startup and the different ideas people had. And of course, also IT companies, large IT companies, MNCs, each one has a very different notion of design and designers. The second, of course, is to find our own voice and to be a part of the discourse by designers, for designers, or people who use design in some ways. The third, that probably led me, and that was a time when I think Ranjan had passed away. And MP Ranjan, again, for those who don't know, I'm sure a lot of people know, is been a educator, a friend, a philosopher for many, many students across many generations, kind of. And Ranjan and I worked together while I was at NID. He was my guide for a couple of projects, and we worked very closely. And Ranjan had a pet phrase, which is in his very Tamil accent, he would say in Hindi, "Tu kya karega?" So he would, like, when I would say, hey, this is the problem, this is what is happening, he says, his retort would be, "Tu kya karega?" And it also sort of it just one day clicked, like, "Tu kya karega?" Like, what would have Ranjan said, and what would I have done? And I said, this is my response kind of to all of that which is happening. So this is probably a way to sort of give back to the community. But not in the community in a larger sense, community in that sense of the people I know, the people who I think will benefit from this. Because I also work with a lot of interns and young people, and I might not have the time for it, and I may not be able to inspire people as well as other people will. Kind of, there are some fantastic designers out there who can do some great stuff and who can share their stories. So in some ways, I became the enabler for that. And of course, quick call to my friend Narayan, and Narayan kind of jumped in in, but there were other people. We met at a cafe in Kormangla. I said, this is the idea. What do you guys think? Some people have still stuck on 3 years later. Some of them, of course, work or something. They have kind of moved away.
Correct.
Narayan is my co-founder. He is the unofficial COO, COO, travel officer, everything you can say. But there are a bunch of people like Ranga, who you also interviewed. He did the first design up, sort of the visual design for it. I created the brand, which was a very, very simple one, and Helvetica and very bland. The idea was that you could fill in. Anyone can come in and fill that in with more things, kind of. So yeah, that's how it all started.
Wow, brilliant. So this reminded me, because I have interviewed, which is yet to go live. I interviewed Sudhir Sharma, who's the editor and a publisher of the Pool magazine, and also was part of Elephant Design before. Yeah. So we had a discussion based on documenting stuff that is happening in India, at least in the design space. Yeah. So if you look at the Netflix documentary Abstract, there are like bunch of designers who have been documented, and Paula Scher's first design has been it is preserved in an archive mode. So do you have any thoughts on archiving these talks, these conferences, these seminars, or these workshops which you have, which could help in a longer run for people, which have a longer shelf life and becomes like a documentation, because that's also missing in India, right? So do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very, very relevant question, actually. So I think there is a bunch of things. One, of course, is the collaboration with Audiogyan, which will probably document some stories, which I'm really hopeful of. We've done a decent job of documenting some of these past, like, for example, speakers like Naresh Narasimhan and quite a few other speakers, which we have documented through video and things. But I feel we could do much, much better. I think I always have the sense of dissatisfaction that quality could have been so much better. We could have captured more insights. We could have done another interview with him and so on. And with so many other people who were there. Correct. But I think this is a start. This probably is a great way to start. There are a couple of ideas that we have. I think time is probably the only enemy. But in terms of ideas, never. I think, as I was saying in my earlier podcast, ideas a dime a dozen or cheaper than that. Execution is where it matters. And correct. I think that's where we will probably hear in maybe we'll announce it at DesignUp itself, some of the thoughts on documentation, because I'm also keen, and Ranjan also used to speak a lot about that, in terms of documenting the India story. Correct. What are we doing about that kind of thing? So I think tu kya karega would have been this kind of
we have a rich history, and I like because of the older technique of Guru Shishya translation, where everything was oral, and that's how Audiogyan also started, because at least it gets documented because of the technology part of it, but
absolutely,
at least it is. So what can we expect in DesignUp this year? I mean, this year or in general also, like what is the overall character which we can expect to happen there?
So people who have been to DesignUp, and I'm quoting some of my friends like Katya from Australia and a couple of other people, they feel it's a very warm, happy conference. Lots of eager, energetic young people, older folks, all sorts of people from all walks of life. Broadly, I think what you can expect is good content. I think content is really the king at DesignUp. It takes a lot of time for us to zero in on speakers, and we take our time to really speak with them, understand them, sort of even help them with the presentation. So I've had a couple of senior folks, and one particularly very senior person from a large MNC, who was kind of nice enough to run his presentations past me, and we kept on going through that. We did a couple of iterations. I spoke to him. He showed it to me. So I think we went through like almost 4 different passes of that. I'm more than happy to do that, because I really want great stuff out there on the stage. And I think it was great that he also was reciprocating. So if people want, and there are a couple of young people that I've worked with to first understand what they're going to present, fine-tune that. So I think one is that, will the person be able to present, tell a compelling story? What is the story about? Will our audience like it? In the early years, it was me and one or two people. Increasingly, because this load has gone bigger, this year we've got like a huge, we got about 6 times the number of entries we got last year for people to speak. So I think now we have a huge sort of volume of
and more
great
challenges.
entries, more challenges kind of thing. So
but it's a good problem.
It's
to
a good
have
problem.
also.
Totally, it's a good problem to have. And so what we've done is this year we've deployed a bunch of people. There's about 4 or 5 of them who are now doing the preliminary screening. So we probably do like, okay, this seems to be something that our audience will not enjoy. And part of it is just not me, because I can be very opinionated. I also involve some of the younger people and say, do you think you will listen to this? Do you think you would love to sit through this?
Correct.
And what we do is we take away all the names and we just say the headlines, the sort of the title of the talk, the short description, talk, workshop, it could be anything. So I think this is what we do, and we sort of cull it down to a small number. Then we talk to people. Then again, I will talk to them. So it's like a lot of screening process that goes in. And there are some people that we want to invite, so we'll reach out to them. But apart from that, there is also this whole community participation. And the other thing is to say is that please don't sell your platform or your product or your thing out there. That's not a nice thing to do. No one likes it kind of thing. And we also don't sort of want to sort of give you slots because based on your sponsorship. Having said that, Adobe is our title sponsor, but the good part is that they interfere least in this whole thing, which is why we love them. They've been doing a lot of good stuff for the Indian community, and without them we would probably not have been where we are. But again, the kind of speakers that we negotiate almost and they send are some of the best in the industry, like Koivin. He's a legendary sort of designer, named amongst the 50 most sort of sought after living designers. This year we have Valhead, again, someone who the community sort of really looks up to. So it's not like we'll get average designers, we'll get like some of the best of the best. So I think that's probably where we kind of make sure that if we are getting someone on board, it has to be stellar content kind of thing. So yeah,
I'm getting more and more anxious and like really looking forward for this event now. This is slightly a more generic question. What according to you is the importance of like conferences like these, at least in India?
So I think these conferences, one is of course
because sorry,
sure, absolutely.
because I've seen like a set of people who generally go to these conferences in search of getting their answers, getting questions as an answers to their questions, and then there are certain set of people who are really talented and have done some remarkable work in their career, but they generally feel that these conferences are like waste of time or more of networking. You just bump into a lot of unwanted people and things like that, right? So leaving that picture aside, what do you think in terms of good content, in terms of good takeaways, what do you think is the importance of conferences like these?
I think largely it is, I think there are two parts to it. One is the kind of conferences you described. I think people like to get out of their office once in a while and just probably not do the usual regular stuff. So this probably is a way for them to go out and see what is happening, maybe spend some time looking or listening to speakers, sometime just meeting old friends, chilling out, maybe getting a beer after that. So I think that's probably one aspect of it. The way I think we think about especially DesignUp and some of the other conferences, of course, is that this is a great place for designers to meet and feel that we all share the same issues, the same problems, similar things cutting across companies. I personally feel Indian design sort of studios or companies are still more insulated kind of as such. So a guy from Book My Show may not talk to MakeMyTrip, though we have the word my kind of in the middle of it all. But I think it's very rare kind of. These are places where you can actually meet up and kind of realize, we have the same hiring problems, with the same retention problems, trying to convince managers to buy this or do that. And, we are all on this together. And I think that's very important. Leaving aside big companies like Book My Show or whatever, I think there are hundreds of smaller startups and things where there might be just 2 designers or 1 designer. I think these are absolutely invaluable for those designers to come and see, oh wow, this is my community, this is my tribe. But interestingly, in DesignUp, what I'm also seeing is a lot of product managers come in. And a lot of front-end developers also come in. So you have front-end developers, product managers, designers. It's essentially a meeting place of all those people who create products.
Correct.
And I think that is very important for them to talk and say, hey, this is the problem I face with designers, and hey, this is the problem I face with developers. And, that's probably a good way to sort of solve this problem. And I think when you're out of that context of your organization, this may be a good way to sort of bond as well. So I think there are multiple ways. But yeah, I think one of the reasons for starting DesignUp was that fear of having or going to those conferences where someone comes up and gives you a card and says, I offer hosting for $2,999 kind of thing. And I'm like, not interested. Sorry, that's not the reason why I came to this conference. And I think that's not the idea. That's probably also the reason why we set the bar slightly higher, have slightly higher costs. So we want quality people coming in, people who do it for the love of coming in as opposed to just coming in to sell you stuff. The second, of course, is that running big conferences are pretty expensive in India. And compared to like US, where a conference will cost $1,000, a $300 conference in India will be like super expensive for most people kind of. So I think, we try and kind of do all of that balancing act. But overall, conferences are important. I think people need to go out and see. The more, the better. But I really wish that people focused on good content. They focused on kind of really bringing the community together in meaningful ways, not the current marketing ways. Correct.
And just to add to that, I have my own agenda also, that it helps you break out of the bubble which you live in, because it's much more exposure to different kinds of people, and then hearing their thoughts, hearing their challenges actually gives you confidence, or also at least makes you aware that yes, there's a bigger pond out there or bigger sea out there.
Oh, absolutely. That's so important to do that.
So Jay, I would like to conclude with one last question in this, which is, what's the future of DesignUp? I mean, where do you see it going in the coming decades, if I may say?
I do hope DesignUp lasts long enough kind of thing. There's this beautiful quote by this management writer thinker called Charles Handy. He's not just your quick fix management thinker, but he's a kind of a deep thinker who I really appreciate. And he talks about building something which people find valuable, people find joy in, people find happiness. And he says that is something which human beings call a soul. I think it's probably the future really is to find and define our soul better and kind of create that. That's one thing. That's probably a very esoteric answer to your question. But on a more fundamental level, I think we definitely want to, we're asking the question of ourselves, like, how big can DesignUp go? I mean, because this year we could, I think, go to 850 people possibly kind of, but should we? Those are the sort of things. I'm not increasingly not a big advocate of scaling up things like crazy. We can probably do 3 events a day, 3 events a year kind of thing. Should we do that? Maybe not kind of thing. So in some ways we are kind of grappling with those questions of scaling or not scaling, but we definitely want to involve organizations, communities, people like yourselves who are doing some great stuff. I think I would love to sort of really involve people who obsess about different things about design and that obsess about it without any monetary gain in mind.
Correct.
So I have a lot of friends like that who are obsessed about, let's say, A or B or C. Like, you're obsessed about creating an episode a week. Even if you were paid, not paid, doesn't matter.
Correct.
I think increasingly it should also help kind of bring those people together who are obsessed, who want to contribute, who want to sort of see something beyond just themselves kind of. So I think that would be the real platform. This year we interestingly have a lot of requests for collaborations, but I think they're not well defined. We've turned a lot of them down, including large industry bodies who have come to us and said, let's collaborate kind of. And like say we don't probably see any value, and you might not get value from us because we're completely different. We are for the naysayers who say not this speaker, not that speaker, not this panel, not that panel kind of thing. But I think increasingly we will focus on getting bigger speakers, more workshops possibly. This year we have master classes, which is like a standalone 1-day event. So it's like one master class is a day completely by itself. And then we have the talks and workshops. And workshops are the smaller 2-hour formats, which anyone who's attending the conference can also go for a talk, go for a workshop as they wish. They need to book in early in advance. That's the only thing. But we're not distinguishing between ticket classes or workshops and talks. But the master classes are separate ones.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll scale up more of master classes. We will also collaborate with some corporates to offer them master classes. That's another hope that we have. So this year we might possibly collaborate with MakeMyTrip. I mean, it's easy to sell to them, of course, and they're quite kind of keen. Could we actually have some master classes in their premises before these leaders come to our premises in DesignUp kind of thing? So I think those kind of collaborations is also what I'm looking forward to in the years to come.
Oh, nice. Cool. All the best for your conference. And there's one more plug, which is do visit designup.io. The conference is happening from 25th of October to 27th of October. You can find obviously all the details on the website. So thank you, Jay, for giving us your time. And it was really a pleasure talking to you, and all the best for the event.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me over, and really appreciate this conversation. And just to add to it, we also have a bunch of what we call the pre-events, which is happening in Chennai and in Hyderabad and in Singapore. And hopefully in Mumbai maybe next year.
Oh, nice. I'll be looking forward for it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher, or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on Audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.
It's the two megastars summer mashup. The awesome iPhone on the Rockstar Metro PCS network. Get the iPhone you've always wanted for $0, so you can jam without limits.
It's a hit. Get an iPhone SE on us when you switch. Metro PCS. Coverage not available in some areas, plus sales tax and $10 activation fee. Requires port of number not currently active on T-Mobile network or on Metro PCS in past 90 days to an unlimited LTE plan. See store for details and terms and conditions.